Good afternoon, everybody. Getting in the recap here for today. If we take a look on this higher time frame, we can go to the hourly quickly, actually. We delivered into that hourly fair value gap we had labeled yesterday. So we wanted to see if price could reach up into this. Lo and behold, right, we actually delivered perfectly into the consequent encroachment of that. Nice to see. We end up doing that before the New York Open, though. So seeing that, right, our target's getting hit prior to the New York Open, understanding that we also had a large range day yesterday, extremely large range following CPI. We really expected consolidation, and that's really all we got, right? We have this midnight level here. Price made a few moves up and down, but really just kind of consolidating around that level. Right, also had this daily fair value gap we've been looking at, the daily volume imbalance. So a lot of daily key levels here that, especially coming off of a large range day like yesterday, would cause price to just consolidate around it, continue to gravitate. Just as a note, right, when we are kind of expecting consolidations or expecting price to chop like this, we really have to trade within the range. And if we're going to be trading within the range, we want to see liquidity be taken before we look to engage. So we're right kind of looking for those run on liquidity, see those stops get picked, and then try to basically take the trades that target now opposing liquidity. And that is what the two trades today came off of. If we take a look on we'll go back to the 5 quickly. All right, so we take a look at the 5. Here in London, we just consolidate, create relative equal lows. So this will be kind of the sell side that we targeted in the morning. Right, equal lows here. We consolidate, create relative equal highs. We create some more relative equal highs, and then at 8:30, we run right up and through, clearing that buy side, entering the 1 hour fair value gap, and holding at the consequent encroachment, wicking lower now, and engineering, right, relative equal lows here. So before 9:30, we're now sitting here where we have these equal lows. We have liquidity that's resting here, and buy side had already been taken. So if we're within the range, we're consolidating. After clearing buy side, it would just make sense to target that sell side. And that is why that was the first target we had this morning. As we work back to the 1 minute now. Right, we've created this equal low here. So notice we formed this low at 9:15, and then we start retracing here at 9:30. If you look on this run lower, we now have created relative equal highs. So when price is kind of consolidating like this, all we do is bounce back between liquidity, back and forth. So anytime we have liquidity like this, notice how we form sell side liquidity. We now reverse to attack the buy side before now attacking the sell side before going for the buy side again. So back and forth, back and forth. You can really see that manifesting here. We understood, however, because 9:30 immediately went for this buy side, that we more than likely were waiting for a reversal to now start targeting this low. Because ideally we wanted to see if this low would get ran right at 9:30. So 9:30 kind of create that volatility, run the low, and then we were going to see if we could target this buy side. Because we ran for the buy side first, it just made sense now that these equal lows would have to be interacted with here, right back into the daily fair value gap as well. So we were just waiting for the confirmation of that. That comes here when we now clear this equal high. Or not equal high, just a swing point. So we clear this swing point. We then break structure lower. So the YouTube framework, no actual fair value gap. Right, our entry came right on this inversion paired with this level here. So this gray line is the old daily high. So yesterday's high, that's going to be a key level, right? The open, high, low, and close of the daily candle. We form a fair value gap initially here on the way up. And now as we close underneath it, this tiny fair value gap here becomes an inversion. So even though it's small, it's still working, algorithmic delivery. So as we're breaking underneath the old daily high, we're breaking through this inversion level here. We're creating a breaker at the same time. Our entry simply comes on that old high. So the top of the inversion fair value gap. Understanding that we have created no inefficiencies in here. So we're safe leaving our stop just above the candle high. Never gets touched. We sit through a little bit of this chop. But ultimately, these equal lows here was our final target. So we get into our target. And now we're not expecting price to continue to run. We understand we're consolidating, so we're just waiting for confirmation that price now wants to revert and start attacking the buy side here. So in a similar fashion, how we attack buy side here, right after clearing sell side, we'll attack that buy side again. So we have buy side resting here. This entry has already been tagged out. We now look and see that we hold the mean or the consequent encroachment of that daily fair value gap. We then revert back above the old liquidity. So we're purge and reverting here. We're doing it aggressively, right, in one swift motion. We then come back down and tap that level perfectly. So seeing us reject here, not getting near the daily fair value gap, and now start to move away, we can already expect price to start targeting buy side. We notice now how midnight level, so we like the midnight level, paired with that midnight level, we have a fair value gap, and overlapping that fair value gap is a volume imbalance. So a lot of PD arrays in here that when we, in one swift motion, push up and through all of this, that is right there our confirmation that we are okay to go long. So now our long comes just on the actual daily volume imbalance. So we use the daily level, but you see how we're on the 1 minute chart utilizing, right, daily, oh, move that there, daily levels. So we have to have an understanding of how to mesh these time frames all together. A lot of the entries kind of rely on higher time frame understanding. But now we're breaking above the daily volume imbalance. So I'm using the daily volume imbalance as the entry. You could use the midnight, you can use the inversion. A lot of opportunities here if you know what you're looking for. We went with the low hanging fruit, daily volume imbalance, stop now underneath this volume imbalance here, just in case, right? This is still under 2 handles. That's a tiny stop loss, we're okay with that. And for us, we really just targeted 5 handles. So we got out on this candle high. If I go to a 2 minute quickly, you'll see that, oh, where are we at? You'll see that the 2 minute fair value gap high is kind of what we exited on. So there's a 2 minute fair value gap here. That as price is trading up into that, we can kind of align 5 handles with it. So now as we get back to it, we create equal highs here. And now as we create these equal highs, we stab up and through, tagging us out of that second trade. At that point, we were done for the morning, right? We were content with that. We continued to follow price. We noticed that as we break this high, we did it with a 5 minute fair value gap. So once again, the importance of understanding multi-time frame analysis, right? We're watching price here. We break above, creating now a 5 minute breaker, right? Leaving a fair value gap there. So when we see that, we still expect one more run higher if we can get back into this inefficiency. Especially because now as we work back down to the lower time frames we were on, we were looking for this wick here to be really the target for higher prices. So return into this, and we notice how we left buy side sitting right underneath that. So now we've created buy side, we've broken structure here, we have left behind a higher time frame inefficiency in the form of that 5 minute, and it's overlapped with the breaker block as well. So that's kind of that unicorn setup, right? We could expect price to hold this, at least in the short term, to attack our buy side. We get that really playing out nicely, where we engineer that buy side. We give a retracement into the 5 minute. Notice how the 1 minute candle bodies hold that level beautifully, right? You can't see the 5 minute here, but the candle bodies are respecting the actual 5 minute fair value gap. At this point, we start slowly delivering into buy side. We spoke about how once we ran this buy side, understanding we're in that consolidating market, we would actually expect a reversal back into this range. And that's because this type of delivery here, when we create this stair stepper delivery, I like to call it, right? So we're creating higher highs and higher lows. We're not creating any lower lows on the way into a liquidity target. Now, as we hit that buy side, all of this here is liquidity to now target. So if we're already in a predisposed market that wants to consolidate, which today was, we're delivering into the extreme of a range, right? Clearing buy side and returning into that really rejection block here. So the extreme of the range, it would make sense to, after clearing that buy side, reverse and start attacking the sell side that was left behind. Let's move that, right? We create the equal highs. We ended up creating equal highs, so we couldn't run that high out. The price ends up breaking structure at this low, and then returning into that fair value gap. So we did get a short-term YouTube model here. Even though these are equal highs, look at this, right? This here is a short-term high. So we have to be satisfied with this as the short-term high being cleared, market structure shift, returning into the higher fair value gap. And from here, as we head into lunch now, we really just target the opposing liquidity that was left behind here in the morning. So on the way up, right, we had lows here. Obviously, all these lows get wiped in one swift motion, but we still had lows here that were resting near these daily liquidity levels. Ultimately, we revert kind of back into, right, the daily volume imbalance, the midnight open, the daily fair value gap. So you see once again how these levels play just a key role in holding price here, kind of manipulating where it'll get consolidated and stuck at. We do have a few setups that form during lunch. So as we are attacking sell side liquidity, right, we have a low here and here. We have relative equal lows. We can look at this as sell side liquidity. So we form sell side liquidity. We have relative equal lows. Notice here at lunch, we come up to clear a short-term high. We can't even close outside of that range. So when you see something like that, right, that's kind of a signature of running stops more than an actual break. When we wick it, close back in the range, and then we break structure lower, doing it with a volume imbalance paired with the fair value gap. But as we break, we're actually doing it with that volume imbalance, and that's what ends up being used. So price returns into the volume imbalance after bouncing off this one. So we don't want to get too confused, but once you understand all this, you see how these levels kind of interact and mesh with each other day in and day out, right? Daily levels like this are still being respected on the actual 1 minute chart. And that's why it's important to understand where we are. As we bounce from here, we kind of just play around that volume imbalance. Ultimately, notice how when we break below it, we're breaking below the daily volume imbalance, and we're breaking and closing below the midnight, and we're leaving a fair value gap behind. So now we would expect that if we have a target of sell side here and now here, this level should hold us because we've given it up. We've broken lower, breaking through lows as well. This level holds us nicely. We deliver into that sell side, and we get back below the daily fair value gap. Ultimately, we give us a little breaker formation. U2 model short-term low cleared. So just run through price. But notice how once again, right, the best setups are kind of coming at the ends of the range. So as we're running out external range liquidity, when we start reversing back above that, that's when we expect price to hold and deliver into opposing targets. So we have a short-term low here that then gets cleared. We then break structure, leaving behind the volume imbalance. So just like we saw here, right, we're breaking through the high with the volume imbalance. That volume imbalance holds us. We accelerate, creating the volume imbalance and a fair value gap. That fair value gap then holds us, because now as we're leaving the daily fair value gap, right, we're creating a new fair value gap here. Volume imbalance, kind of just chopping. But ultimately, we still notice how, right, we create that reversal, and now we attack, just the buy side left behind. So once again, targeting opposing liquidity, continuing to bounce back and forth. And even though, right, we would say this is rather lackluster delivery, a lot of choppiness up and down within the candles, it's still delivering to the logical targets. It's just consolidating, so we would expect that. We were content with the morning, which is why we were fine kind of letting this price just wander aimlessly the rest of the day. Because that's really what we see, right, we get here. We clear that buy side once. We then create equal highs again. So creating new buy side to then be attacked. We give a retracement lower, picking up just short-term inner range liquidity. All right, so we don't need to come all the way back down for this low. We just return into the daily fair value gap. We clear lows on the way here. Here's a low, equal lows. So we're picking up enough liquidity on the way down, right? Holding that midnight level. We then reverse, giving you quick little opportunities, right? We notice inversion levels. So we close above the fair value gap, create that inversion, break above the daily high, continue to deliver into buy side. We get that buy side, we then create equal highs again. So really lackluster, just choppy. Short-term high cleared, right? We break structure at the low, and now we start coming for sell side. So back and forth, we see how really no one's safe in here. You have to trade within the range. If you're trying to hold for extended moves, a day like this will frustrate you because we're not really going anywhere, right? We're breaking out, we're then returning in, right? Clearing people that went long here, well, now they're getting stopped out, right? People that went short here, they get stopped out. So a lot of back and forth in here. Ultimately, we end up closing really on the low of that daily fair value gap. So not much overall. Right, we were content with what we had in the morning. We already understood today was predisposed to be choppy, which is why we wanted to be quick and nimble and capitalize as we could. Going forward, we kind of expect that to continue. Let's see here. We've hit the hourly fair value gap high. I still don't want to be calling tops, but right, we're getting pretty choppy. We have huge imbalances here that can be filled. So I wouldn't mind actually going lower for a day or two to maybe refill some of these inefficiencies down here, right? At least this 1 hour potentially. This doesn't mean we're bearish in the long term, but even in bullish markets, we still see pullbacks. So pullbacks to clear out liquidity. We have a low sitting right here. So sell side. So something like that. If we can come back into this, then we have the opportunity to then start looking for longs again. But for now, especially because, let's see what the daily did here. We have a daily volume imbalance. That'll be pretty interesting. Maybe getting back into the low of that could be a possibility. So that's level here. So getting into that level here, daily volume imbalance. But if we get animated to the downside, trying to attack this low, potentially get back into this inefficiency here. But yeah, that'll be all for today. Thanks for sitting in. Live stream tomorrow will be at 9:25 Eastern. So until then, have a good night, everybody, and we will talk in the morning. Take care.